Professor, how much of a win or how significant is the fact that EU has agreed to open membership talks with Ukraine?
That is very significant because at the beginning of the meeting, it was very much doubtful whether Hungary would give in and not veto the decision to go for membership talks with Ukraine. So that has not been the case, that Hungary did not veto it. In fact, actually, Prime Minister Orban left the room when the decision was taken. So he kind of abstained from the vote, and he did not vote in favor of Ukraine taking up negotiations with the EU to become a member, but he did not veto it. And this is important, and I think it's a significant win for Zelensky. It's a significant win for the Western Alliance and for the EU, and they believe that it gives out the right signals to Russia that Ukraine still has the support of the Western allies.
So, Professor, Hungary's position is rather interesting. So they did not veto it, but Hungary's Viktor Orban, as you mentioned, had objected to any talks on EU membership for Ukraine. Then he went on Facebook and posted a message saying that he didn't want to have anything to do with what he called a bad decision. So what do you think changed that he did not veto this decision?
Well, I think there were probably two factors. First of all, he did not want to impose the entire EU bloc of 26 countries, with Hungary being seen as the only one to veto it. And secondly, probably more importantly, the EU turned around and gave him half of the money which they had frozen for rule of law issues with Hungary. So over 20 billion euros was frozen. He got 10 billion yesterday, and I think that probably changed his mind. And there's a realistic prospect for Orban obtaining the remaining 10 billion from the European Union as well. And that probably was very helpful, to put it mildly.
And talk about this decision to open talks on membership. The reality is this doesn't guarantee Ukraine becoming an EU member. In fact, negotiations and talks could take years.
Indeed, and that was one of the arguments of the other EU countries when they talked to Hungary. They said, opening membership relations doesn't mean that immediate membership talks doesn't mean that Ukraine will immediately become a member. Many, many decisions have to be taken. Over 70, I believe, have to be taken over the years, and it will take many years. Some people even say it may take up to 10 years for a country joining the European Union. And of course, also membership negotiations will be opened with Bosnia-Herzegovina and also with Moldova. And that will complicate the process because these talks will all take place in parallel, meaning the EU bureaucracy will be very, very busy. And that also means that the talks with each individual country will probably be slower than if there was only one country which was expecting to become an EU member.
And Professor, finally, I have to ask you about funding. Zelensky wanted two things from this EU summit. One was talks on EU membership. The other one was more financial support. How likely is he to get that? He certainly faced a lot of obstacles here in Washington. And what will be the best case scenario, if you will, or outcome for him?
Yeah, at the moment, we don't know. I would say it's 50-50. He stands still a realistic chance of getting the 50 billion euro he has asked for from the EU. There's also still hope for him that he will get the 61 billion from the American Congress. Both parliaments, both leaders are divided at the moment. There's opposition to giving that much money to Ukraine, but it's not impossible. As far as the EU is concerned, some countries have agreed to increase the budget, but only in order to give Ukraine more money, while other countries say if we increase the budget, there also needs to be more money for migration purposes and other issues which are urgent, which need to be dealt with urgently. But the discussions are continuing, and everyone in the EU knows that Ukraine needs more funding. Not this year, because the current budget still includes aid for Ukraine, but we are talking about 2024. The next budget for next next year. And so that isn't that urgent. It could be a few weeks or even a couple of months until that budget is agreed without Ukraine suffering a lack of aid. But eventually, of course, Ukraine does need more money to buy weapons, to buy ammunition, to resist that onslaught by Russia. And everyone knows that. And I would be slightly optimistic that the European Union, in the end, will agree to give 50 billion or something like that to Ukraine in order to defend itself.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll leave it there, Professor Klaus.